The media presenters today, thank you very much for joining us on this first day of March 2024 for the Alliance for Change's press conference. I'm happy to say that this afternoon we'll be receiving statements and comments from leader of the Alliance for Change, Mr. Kemraj Ramjatan, Member of Parliament and former GS, the Honorable David Patterson, and of course, our executive member and expert on oil and gas, Dr. Vince Henry. So my apologies, Vince, I'm changing your name. Uh, Vince, Vince Adams. I'd like to ask Mr. Ramjatan to go straight. I know you have two presentations and that you're going to be making. First on the teachers and also on the hotel development project that is being funded by Qatar. So, Mr. Ramjatan, over to you.
Kathy, as I indicated to you, I'll do one on the Qatari hotel and I'll take questions on the teachers' strike. Since its last press release, where it bemoaned the complete lack of transparency on the transfer of ownership of lands on Carifesta Avenue to a Qatari conglomerate for construction of a five-star hotel, the AFC has noted government's release that it will be sold to that conglomerate for 2 billion Guyana dollars, that is the lands. This value of prized prime real estate is obviously contradicting what earlier the PPP, when in opposition, had demanded, and amounts to a shortchanging of the Guyanese people in view of a value of $5 billion it had attached to the brand Tuari's mudlots, which is 1/5 the size of this Qatari giveaway. There is no doubt massive corruption is in this repugnant scheme, just like the PPP's government sale of the GT&T shares to the Chinese. And this, of course, if indeed the lands belong to government or the state. The AFC is aware that the disputed lands were conveyed to the city of Georgetown by its previous owner, Mr. Hogg, for recreational and educational purposes. This ownership dispute ought to be settled first before any sale or construction commence. For more than a century, this presumptive right of these lands in the city was the settled position. But it seems that Jagdeo Go Invest and the instrumentality of the Lands and Surveys Commission can produce their magic to get ownership in whomsoever they want. Additionally, the AFC is aware that there will clearly be a surplus of rooms in view of the more than 10 hotel developments which have been projected, some already having been commenced. Bringing a rich foreign company to add to the room supply will certainly provide unfair competition and will put many of the local investors in the red. Moreover, the support the government is giving to the Qataris has vastly exceeded any support given to local companies. It is a betrayal of trust by this government, and which goes against the spirit of local content. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kemraj. And I'd like to ask Mr. Patterson, David Patterson, to make his presentation on some of the recent developments in the gas to shore, proposed gas to shore project.
Thank you very much, Kathy, and good afternoon, members of the media. I would like to make a statement on the status of our power generating sector. With the recent announcement that the PPP's pet project, the Wales Gas to Shore, will be delayed until the end of 2025, the Alliance for Change would like to express our deep concern as to the state of the country's electricity sector for the near future. To say that anyone was surprised by the PPP's admission that the ill-conceived Wales Gas Ashore project has been delayed would be an understatement. From the inception, this project was doomed to fail. There were no studies other than those undertaken by the coalition administration prior to 2019. The selection of the project site remains questionable. The economic viability of the project is untested. And in fact, even the basis for the need of this project is flawed. When the project was launched with much fanfare in 2021, the PPP projected that the country's power demand will be in excess of 405 megawatts by 2025, an increase of 145% above the country's existing generating capacity. This increase, they claimed, was due to Guyana's positive investment outlook. At the recently concluded oil and gas conference, the government has revised the country's energy demand projection to 280 megawatts by 2025, a reduction of 124 megawatts, or 30%, of the initial projection in 2021 without any explanation. This clearly demonstrates that the basis for the Gas Ashore project was pure guesswork. Ladies and gentlemen, media, here are the facts. In July 2020, the country's available power generation was 165 megawatts with a peak demand of 125 megawatts. At the end of 2023, GPL power generation was 180 megawatts with a peak demand of 165 megawatts, a mere additional 50 megawatts in 3 years. The increase in generating capacity was entirely due to the commissioning of new generation sets procured under the coalition administration. If the PPP energy forecasts are to be believed, the country will require an additional 101 megawatts of new generating power to meet the 280 megawatts demand by 2025 before the Wales Gas Ashore project comes online. The nation should be concerned, based on this projection, where and how these additional power generating sets will be acquired. We've already seen that at the end of 2023, GPL procured 17 second-hand containers for 27 million US. To date, only 5 of the 17 are operational. Interestingly, of the 5 operational sets, these 5 have been tripping whenever any load are applied to them, thus making them useless for the intended purpose. The AFC is concerned that due to the lack of planning and mismanagement, several similar ill-advised backroom procurement deals will be undertaken in an effort to maintain some level of functionality to the Demerara-Berbice interconnected system. Citizens should also be aware that if ever the Wales Gas Ashore project becomes operational, all other generating sets, all currently connected or will be connected to the DBIS, will be mothballed, which means that all the investments for additional power will be considered sunk costs. Finally, the AFC notes that no progress has been made on the country's application to the US Exim Bank for the loan to fund the Gas Ashore project. It is suspected when the US Exim Bank examined the project details that their technical experts has deemed the project not financially sustainable. This is a similar position that the IDB took towards the equally ill-fated Amila Falls projects. The facts are the PPP has never been able to execute any major project which has proven to be financially viable. Projects such as the Skeldon Sugar Factory, the Burbis Bridge, Marriott Hotel, CGIA expansion, and the fiber optic cable are prime examples of their poor project management. Thank you.
Thank you, Member of Parliament David Patterson. And Dr. Vince Adams, can I ask you to make your presentation?
And welcome to our goodly press. Our second Vice President, Jagdeo, is confused, lacks understanding, or simply dishonest. For there are no $20 billion assets to cover an oil spill or no 52% profit for Guyana touted by the Vice President. We watched and listened with dismay the second VP's press conference of February 22nd, 2024, and thought our ears must be failing us with the disbelief of what was being spouted by this self-anointed oil guru from whom the people are expecting truthful information about our God-given patrimony. The VP must be either a very slow learner, confused, or just can't help himself with his propagandistic ritual, as we know for sure that he has been reading the many letters by learned professionals explaining in the most simplistic manner the critically consequential matters pertaining to Exxon's billboard hoax about Guyana's receiving 52% of all revenues and about his rabid opposition to a parent company guarantee in case of an oil spill. The little oil spill in Tobago has again awakened the attention of not only all of Guyana and Trinidad and Tobago, but also all of the Caribbean, which could be in serious danger of not only an environmental catastrophe, but also financial bankruptcy. A little spill it is, compared to the existing real scenarios of having a spill of similar circumstances from one of the vessels that traverse through the Caribbean from Guyana, with a load of 1 million barrels of oil every day and every 1.5 days, and soon to increase to at least 1 million barrels every day, which is 35 times the Tobago spill. While Prime Minister Rowley shows leadership and his understanding of the gravity of the situation by declaring and treating the incident a national disaster, our VP childishly mocks that he doesn't hear anything coming from the environmentalists and media about a parent company guarantee, instead of him seeing this as a lessons learned to improve our grossly inadequate preparation for any such spills. If this $30,000 or so barrel spill is a national disaster, imagine what it will be with a 1 million barrel spill or 35 times Tobago's from a ship carrying oil from Guyana or from a well blowout spilling millions of barrels. Of course, the VP couldn't help veering off into his fantasy land talking about a capping stock, which he knows nothing about but always attempts to mislead that he somehow initiated it, when in fact it was procured by the coalition. Nevertheless, he knows just enough to hide the fact that he has secretly tripled his deployment time from the 3 days imposed by the coalition to 9 days, thus recklessly allowing for the gushing of at least an extra 6 days of potentially millions of barrels into the ocean from a well blowout. The VP must explain to the people of Guyana and the Caribbean why he has taken such irresponsible and reckless action with grave potential consequences to the region's environment and the fishing and tourism industry when he clandestinely, one, triple delivery time of the capping stock, two, reverse the direction given to Exxon by the team of export from the GGMC, the Department of Energy, the EPA, and his own consultant, Alison Redford, to reinject the hot, toxic, radioactive, and oily water instead of dumping it into a pristine ocean. And three, why he weighs on production way above the safety limit to enhance the chance of a spill. As expected, the VP had to swivel to his foolishness about some sort of concocted $2.6 billion and a phantom $20 billion in assets that he could seize from EMGL to pay for an oil spill. As if that wasn't laughably enough, he went on incoherently to confuse his own self with muddling up book and market values of parent companies, Exxon, Chevron, and Hess, with that of EMGL, seemingly not realizing that the parent company's assets are irrelevant and insulated from the liabilities of an oil spill, unless there is a parent company guarantee, which he frenetically opposes, or maybe seems to be unknowingly making the case for one. Nonetheless, let's try again to educate the VP. First, EMGL is a subsidiary of Exxon, set up as such to insulate Exxon from liabilities, and is the only official contractor party to the contract, leaving Exxon scot free of any liabilities. Second, all assets, and listen to this carefully. Second, all assets are being bought and paid for by by Guyana through cost oil, and for the PSA will be turned over to Guyana free of charge upon termination. So it is daftness to keep repeating that he will seize our own assets from EMGL. In any event, we challenge the VP for the nth time to please publish these assets he claims to be owned by the child company EMGL that adds up to $20 billion. In other words, put up or shut up to stop fooling the people. It was for those reasons which triggered the wisdom behind the coalition putting into law the requirement for a parent company guarantee, simply stipulating that the parent companies must cover the cost of any and all spills, since EMGL does not have the assets to do so. A stipulation agreed upon in writing by Exxon until the PPPC took over and overturned it, only to be slapped down by the courts. But we all know the rest of the story, where the PPP stood steadfastly as Exxon's defenders in appealing the decision, betraying its own people. But most disturbingly, the VP justification for protecting Exxon is that they will go bankrupt with an oil spill. In other words, he impresses that he will fight with his last breath to avert bankruptcy of Exxon, but okay with bankruptcies of Guyana and our regional neighbors. Now, for the Exxon, um, for the absurdity of the billboard. Sadly, in the same press conference, the VP embarrassingly went on to expose the toxic mixture of his dutifulness to Exxon and the limitations of his honorary degree when he once again prattled on with his selling of Exxon's farcical billboard touting that Guyana is getting 52% of all revenues. Let us read and spell for the VP that it is impossible, let me repeat it, it's impossible for Guyana to ever get 52% of the revenues without the impossibility of zero cost for production operations. Simply put, Guyana now gets 14.5%, consisting of 2% royalty and 12.5% from splitting the 25% profit after deducting the 75% total cost of capital, amortization, and operation. It was therefore shocking to hear the vice president say that when capital amortization is paid off, the profit will be 100%, so we will get 50% plus the 2% royalty to make this imaginary 52% propagandized on Exxon's billboard. According to the VP's imagination, this means to him that operations cost is and will be zero, an impossibility. Since the VP hides all of the data, let us assume that at best the operations cost may be around 30%, which will make a profit all of about 70% after capital cost is paid off and becomes zero. Guyana's take will then be about 37%, half of the 70% plus the royalty. Finally, the sad part of this all is that the VP bombastically insults and abuses the press in covering his bluffs and disinformation in his answers to their question. But it's also evidentiary that the man is so obstinate in his ways that he even shuns his own learned attorney, Datadin's counsel, to speak not of what you know not. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vince Adams. And that concludes our formal presentations. At this stage, I would like to invite the media to use the raise hand function. And if you would identify yourself and the organization you represent, and we will then take your questions. Over to the media. Oh, sorry, I didn't see that. So, Davina, can you go right ahead, please? And this is Davina from Kaichor News.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. I have some questions based on your opening remarks and a few substantive issues. First of all, Ms. Dr. Adams, you were speaking about the billboards just recently and the fact that Guyana would perhaps never get the 52% Exxon is telling us that we're receiving. We know that government has refused to renegotiate the oil contract, but there are some stakeholders who believe that we can insert a ring fencing clause or provision into the permits being granted to ExxonMobil. Dr. Adams and perhaps Mr. Ramjatan, can you say whether this is legally possible? And for Mr. Patterson, you said that the gas to energy project is flawed and the basis for it was guesswork. Are you saying that the project is useless? And if so, can you say what alternative method of power generation is the AFC suggesting? Thanks.
So maybe we can ask, yes.
First of all, ring fencing is not under the authority of the EPA. That's more of a policy decision. I know when I was at the EPA, I know that Dr. Bino, who headed the Department of Energy, which existed at that time, he was working really, really hard to introduce ring fencing. That was one of his main focus. Of course, I guess he ran out of time in getting it done. So that's more of a higher policy decision that has to be made, maybe by the the guy who's in charge of it, or the government. But it's not, that's ring fencing is not part of the EPA authority. But let me say this: the government can make any changes to that to that contract. Again, and I think Article 40 something in the contract says that the contract is renegotiable. It could be I can't remember the exact words, but basically what it's saying, it could be renegotiated with the consent or agreement of Exxon. But the problem is we despite all of the bravado of Barrett Jagdeo in Parliament, jumping up and ranting and raving that the coalition sold out the nation's patrimony, and as soon as he gets into office, he will renegotiate the contract. He has not got, he hadn't even got the nerve to ask for renegotiating. Instead, he's turned everything around 180 degrees by staying quiet and defending, not renegotiating. So anything could be renegotiating as long as we approach Exxon and it's allowed. A simple example that I used when I was at EPA, this same parent company guarantee. We told Exxon that we will not sign any permit without a parent company guarantee, even though the contract allowed for self-insurance, meaning that EEPGL could stand their own insurance. And we said, absolutely not. You don't have any assets. You've got to claw back into that parent company. And that's after pushing back, and we made it clear that they will not produce a barrel of oil. And they turned around, and that's how we got it into the permits without even renegotiation. So it could be done as long as it's reasonable, and Exxon understands it's reasonable. It could be done. But of course, Jack Deere has changed his tune now that he doesn't want to touch any of those changes to the contract.
Thank you.
The contract itself, Davina, has a clause, I think it is Article 47 or thereabouts. Yeah. And whereby, like in every other international contract dealing with natural resources, with the consent of both parties, almost any clause could be renegotiated. And the need for that to be optimized at this moment should be initiated by the government in relation to ring fencing. But of course, the hypocrisy is now very well known. They only loudmouthedly talk about renegotiation when they were in opposition. They now talk about sanctity of contract as if even that contract is written stone. It is not. It is their cheap propaganda and deceit that we are seeing today from Jagdeo and the PPP government.
They talk, since you mentioned sanctity of contract, let's use some examples of sanctity of contract. I talked about one. Another one was when in the contract it says that the government has to give them 7 days notice to visit the ship. We said absolutely not. We can visit at any time. We changed that. How about gas to shore project? The PSA says that thou shalt do a feasibility study for the use of any gas from that project. And Jagdeo's only feasibility study was a no-brainer. So they use this sanctity of contract, and that's right. And the other thing that Kemraj mentioned also, which is very important, in any contract law, in any contract, I don't care where you go, if there is a major change to the conditions, it requires a change and you want a change in contract, you can have a change in the contract. And that is why that clause is there. When they talked about sanctity, if this thing was so cast in stone, why would they put in a clause that allows for it? So it's just the timidness of Barrett with all the big fat talk he had when he was in the opposition. He get it up when he's foaming at the mouth, talking about renegotiation. The president himself, in an interview there on tape, he himself said, yes, they will renegotiate that contract. And then they get like a bunch of little mice when they get into office.
power demands. And we said, fair enough, we engaged Exxon directly, and we came up with this as a transitional. And we'd always said this, that is a transitional energy generating project. In other words, it was just simply, it was for us to transition into 100 renewable power generating country. Let me remind you, Davina, when this project was envisaged, and up to June of 2018, that's so long ago, Exxon provided us with firm costs, with costs. Obviously, nothing is firm until it's signed, to do this exact same project. And with the exact same design, it was for 200 megawatts, the pipeline, a 12-inch pipeline, which is exactly what they're landing now for $1 billion. Exxon provided the government, the coalition administration, with a quote of US 308 million US dollars to land this pipeline on a location in the East Coast. They also submitted a quote for a power plant for 25, not power plant, sorry, for a gas LG gas plant for 25 million US dollars. And the power plant that we are paying now a company $800 million, Exxon committed to fund that plant for 200 megawatts for $275 million, bringing a full total for this entire project that the PPP are doing now for $2 billion. The total committed and in writing agreed was $645 million US dollars. And what we said, fair enough, for this investment, that would allow us to transition from what we had already in stock, what GPL had there. We add on this additional 200 megawatts, and that would allow us time to build out our renewable energy portfolio. So, and you asked what was the Alliance for Change, but it would have been a coalition's idea and plan to power this country. And I just mentioned that the gas, the natural gas was 200 million. We signed a power purchase agreement. GPL signed a power purchase agreement for a wind farm, 26 megawatts. That was signed. It was a public document. It committed to get the wind supply GPL at 26 megawatts of power at I think 8 cents per megawatt. That was signed. Of course, that deal has since been scuttled and killed since the PPP returned. But that's a fact. That is a public announcement. It went to cabinet. It was approved. It was signed by GPL, by the Ministry of Public Infrastructure, by the developers, and they were out of a local entity plus a company from major solar farm manufacturer out of, I think, Belgium. That was done. We also got the Norwegian government to commit the monies that they had for solar, the $80 million US dollars, to procure 60 additional megawatts of solar. I think that project is going ahead now, and we're happy that we were able to provide that. Hydro in our plan. In our plan, in our plans. My apologies. In our plan, we had a mini hydro, a hydro plant that would have been commissioned, a medium size, by 2027, and there were 4 possibilities. The 2 major possibilities, obviously, Amila would have been re-examined, we don't mind, and there was always, I can't remember the name, I think Kumakamari, which had equally or greater potential than Amila. We also commissioned mini hydros, as you know, that's going ahead in Mokomoko, in Kumu. The public would like to know that we signed with a power purchase agreement for the recommissioning of Chumachamari Hydro with a private developer, which was supposed to we would have increased the capacity, it would increase and supply the entire most of Region 8, Madia, Paramakatoy, and those are the areas. The developer would have done it. The government had committed to run transmission lines to that. So we had a overall plan whereby we would transition to 100% renewable. The gas to shore project was simply a transitional and holding pattern, and called the life of the gas to shore project was only at the time slated to be 15 years. But in the 15 years, a hydro project can last for about 50, 60, 70 years with me, not even 100 years. The solar had a lifespan of 25 years. So that was our plan to power the country in the next 25 years.
Add to that, which was this 26 megawatt wind farm. And as you know, the man behind that is Mr. Lloyd Singh. And because of Lloyd Singh's friendship with especially me, leading members of the PPP have indicated that he is not going to go any further, notwithstanding what we called the cabinet approving this thing at, it was 9 cents, I understand, 9 cents per kilowatt hour. Could you imagine the vindictiveness of those associated with the PPP in relation to this project? And this was a project that was long before we ever went in to government in 2015, that he had to provide all kinds of data and show that he can get an investor to come into the country. And he managed to get the investor. He got all the data, got the power purchase arrangements and all that in place, only for when now the administration of the PPP to come and say no, because of certain associations he had. This was a professional project. This was a viable project, and it is renewable. But this is how this nasty government operates. Block it because, oh no, that fella happens to be associated. And he had no associations, as it were, at a political level. He was charitable to the AFC. But this is what we got now. So Guyanese are going to be starved of a renewable project that can give 26 megawatts to the country. Just want to make that point.
You know, the other thing is, and I think it's at this same press conference, or it was the one before, Mr. Jagdeo also stated, I don't know if you recall this, because I made a note of it. He said that they did a feasibility studies for 6 sites and determined that the site on the Region 3 was the best site. Well, I think y'all need to challenge him to show y'all those 6 feasibility studies for those 6 sites, because we all know, just like the $2.6 billion and that never existed, there's nothing to show. So I think you need to challenge him for him to show us those 6 feasibility studies.
Thank you very much, Adam Harris. Thank you for your patience. We're happy to take your question now.
Hughes, before he goes, would you mind if I have a brief follow-up?
Do you mind if I just let Adam
No problem.
hold your thought? We come back to you, but let's get Adam in. And any other Adam? Adam Harris, if you're there. If not, Davina, go ahead with your question then.
Adam is on mute. I don't know why. Did you put him on mute or did he put himself?
Adam, he should hear us, although he's on mute.
Yeah. Well, let's take Davina's question. Davina, thank you. Please go ahead with your follow-up.
Thank you very much. Dr. Adams, just to follow up on what you said about ring fencing, the government had said that, or Mr. Jagdeo rather had said that ring fencing the Stabroek block projects could potentially slow down the investments there and so on. Does the AFC agree with this position? Are you considering how it can possibly impact investments into the block?
That's a bunch of BS. That's a bunch of BS. Doesn't the people would be tripping over to come to Guyana now? I mean, the only thing that Exxon has, why do you think that Exxon is going to put all of their eggs in this basket? Exxon has given up a lot of their investments in the rest of the world to to put their money in two areas, in the Permian Basin where I work and in Guyana. So this whole thing, it's a bunch of baloney about discouraging investors. But that's what Jagio does. He looks for every frivolous reason to come up to defend his stupid decision. But that's absolute nonsense. Investors are tripping over each other to come into Guyana and invest. This year, the kind of discoveries that we are finding in Guyana, I have not heard of any discovery of this type of frequency. What is 80% or something? You're normally lucky if you get 1 out of every 10 wells or 1 out of every 50 wells of discovery. So that's a bunch of baloney.
And
Yes,
I think Adam has sorted his audio issues.
yes,
Over to you,
yes.
Adam.
Thank you. A very good day, everybody. This is for Mr. Patterson. I mean, you have provided information on the increases on the various aspects of the gas to shore project. Is there anything that seems to justify the reason for these increases?
You're on mute, David.
I could only answer that with maybe a one-word answer, two-word answer, the PPP. That's the only answer that you have. I mean, anything that they touch is overinflated. It can't be justified. It's opaque. There's always a great suspicion of corruption and self-interest in these projects. My disappointment has always been, and I mean, we expect that from PPP. I don't know if there's any Guyanese don't expect the PPP to come with this opaqueness, corrupt, and any project they do. You name anyone, I name some. I mean, you name it. My disappointment would have been Exxon, who in 2018, right, and this is in 2018, Exxon set up an entire unit in their HQ in Houston, and then they send down a commercial manager resident in Guyana. I think his name was Cousins, and a staff dedicated to this oil and gas, this gas ashore project that they wanted. Because at that same time they were persuaded that I mean it was a viable project. So this unit in Houston, plus coupled with their local counterpart, they're the ones that produced and provided, not the government of Guyana, have provided quotations for a pipeline for $308 million US. Same dimensions, 1-inch thick, 12-inch diameter, 1-inch thick steel. And of course, so they arrive with the PPP, and has not up to this day, right? And you'd have thought that if they're such a honorable and above board company, they could have explained to the public, or even calling the opposition or stakeholders to say why they have jumped from 308 million US dollars to $1 billion US to do the exact same pipeline. Of course, the only difference between where we were going, which is like the Mahaika to Bari area, I mean, because that's where the straight line is Wales. So you have an additional 97 million dollars just because the PPP returned. That is on the pipeline, and they moved to Wales. And on the power plant, look, we under my ministry, we did a study, and this is what people should try to understand how opaque and corrupt the PPP are. We did a study, K&M Engineering, where we give this and these are an international fund forum, and they came in on the auspices of the IDB. We sent to them. Exxon provided us with a composition of the gas. So, I mean, like broken down methane, butane, and these things. And we said to them, of all the generators in the world, manufacturers of generators in the world, please look at them and tell us which is the best type of generator to use with this exact same end fuel company. And they came up with that. Of course, the PPP read that the report, disregarded it, and decided disregarded the facts and decided, oh no, they'll go with whatever they're going with without any justification, no other study, and obviously this plans that would have cost us 275 million US dollars in 2018, a full quote, is costing us almost $800 million now. Different design, not the one recommended by the international experts. You know what I mean? It's just simply recommended by Jagdeo and Brattington and whoever. So, in short, your answer to that is just the PPP. The boys are back.
A little bit there, related to the question of the ring fencing question, Davina, and I'm going to use David's answer. It's the answer is because the boys are back. It's because of the PPPC. I can tell you with a high degree of confidence, and of course, I'm not speaking for Dr. Bino, but I know that this year was his highest priority to have ring fencing. I know that he was making progress, and I had all the confidence that we would have gotten to ring fencing, with a little bit time left for the coalition. The second thing is, which is important, and which ties into our current stripe. In the same press conference, I mean, it was just mind-boggling to hear the vice president. This guy comes up with excuses that he pulls out of the wherever. But you know what he said about the teachers' pay raises? He said it is not sustainable because we do not know what the oil prices are going to be in the future. However, he's risking our money, the nation's money, for money to be received in the future without knowing oil prices, what the oil prices will be. So he comes up with this stupid excuse where we can't raise teacher salary because I don't know what the oil prices are going to be in the future. That's what ring fencing does. It gambles that oil prices will be higher in the future. So it doesn't make any sense. He just pulls stuff out of the air and try to make all of us fools. Yeah, I think y'all did y'all hear what I said? Okay, yeah. Okay. Huh? I'm getting an echo. It is. It is because and of course I'm not speaking for my AFC friends, but I've always said this. We how it's it I always look at it as my kitchen table accounting. Okay, why would I take money that I currently have if my people are starving, right, and give it to Exxon so that they can use my money to invest, and they're making the billions and trillions with my money while I have my people starving, and then saying, which is a popular line of the vice president in almost every one of his press conferences. He said the only priority that the opposition has is to feed its people. He said that's all we want to do with the money, to feed our people. So he would prefer to not feed the people and not feed, educate, provide health care and everything else, except for put 60% or 58% in infrastructure for his friends and family. But he would prefer not to feed, not to close, not to provide health care, not to educate his people, but giving it to Exxon for them to spend money like drunken sailors, to invest while they make money off of it. But we are not taking that money. And then you come in to tell me that just to give the teachers a little paltry raise, it's not going to be sustainable because you don't know what our prices will be. Well, that's what you do with ring fencing. You don't know what our prices will be later on when you start collecting whatever money you need to be collecting. Oil prices can go through the bottom by the time we are ready to, according to him, start getting our payoff on ring fencing. So it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry, I was about to ask a follow-up to Mr. Patterson.
Go ahead.
And for other members of the panel. Now, a project as large as the gas to energy project, I am sure, should be going to Parliament so that various aspects could be discussed. Has there been any indication that aspects of this project would reach the National Assembly, would reach Parliament?
I carried a motion to the Parliament for exactly that, the private members bill, and obviously that was shut down. That was they used their majority on it. I call on it for the project to be halted, not halted, suspended on pending all these studies that they promised. You could remember when they started in 2020, the Minister of Natural Resources got up in Parliament in the 2020 budget debate, their first budget debate, or in the 2021, I'm not too sure, and listed a whole host of studies that have to be done before they even consider proceeding with it, with the geotechnical, the environmental, and he listed about like 5 or 6, and we voted for monies in the budget to fund for these studies. Jagdio stepped in. The boys are back in town. They just decided to spend that. They did no studies. They just said it's a no-brainer, and they just started spending money. We have spent, Adam, to today. I don't know how much Exxon would have spent out there, buddy, but according to what the budget 2024 says, we have spent $400 million on this project. That's what's listed in budget 2024. You look at what their photos there. All it is, there's a road, which we call a heavy haul road, and there's a clearing. That wharf you see there, that was constructed out of Exxon's money, right? Because Exxon constructed what they call a materials offloading thing. And they went for EPA. So basically, we have spent $400 million, almost 25% of it, on the project. But to build a road from the wharf to clear a site of, I think the area is about like 20 acres, and put sand on. So people could see, and of course now they admitted, because they didn't know geotechnical studies, they have admitted, and they set out what did Brassington and the VP said, I think geological challenges. I mean, geological challenges, a swamp, everything is disappearing. When you walk on it, it's like suck sand, right? They didn't know any studies and those things like that. So therefore, they none of the consultants, none of the contractors can actually work on it unless you get the you have flotation devices. So that's why it's delayed. So they now have to spend an additional amount, I don't know, additional amount just to make it safe to operate on. But they hide it under this word, but the geotechnical challenges. Geotechnical challenges, they just decided and they're going to build in the middle of nowhere in a swamp, no studies, and nothing like that. And let me say this also, Adam. In 2022, I asked the Prime Minister and Minister of Natural Resources, and they responded what contracts and concessions and agreements that you would have signed with Exxon and their other persons and those things like that. In 2022, the Prime Minister wrote back to the Parliament saying that not all the agreements have been signed. As soon as all of the agreements has been signed, he will lay it over in Parliament. 2 years later, nothing. Last budget debate, the Minister of Natural Resources committed to lay all these agreements that they would have signed with these persons. Nothing as yet. And obviously they don't want to lay it because, of course, that starts to unravel where the feed troughs are and how unviable this entire thing is. Because yes, well, all right, fair enough. Because you know how corrupt this is. I mean, I'm still in Parliament. The Speaker, Adam Speaker, bans the word corruption in Parliament. Imagine that. Look, there's another thing that you have to be aware of, Adam, and they haven't spoken about this publicly. On the off chance this pipeline is laid and the power plant is built, someone has to operate it and run it. It's not GPL. Who is the company? Not the company that is billing it. It would not be that company operating and running it. Whoever that, how are we going to get that? So therefore, there'll be a company who will be collecting the money from GPL. They'll just be like a Warstiller does used to do for their plants. Operational O&M company. That company, who are the beneficial owners of that company? Because just hypothetically, if it's the one of the PPP Clooney's, and you're getting one US cent per megawatt for 300 megawatts for 375 days for 20 years. If you do the maths, you can see it. That's generational funding, but nobody has said that even if you get half a US cent, you do the maths because it's 300 megawatts per day. So you get 300 megawatts, 1 cent, 365 days by 20 years. You can see how many billions of dollars somebody will be getting just and thing. That is why they do these things and they're so opaque. And then they'll say, oh, it's some company. Of course, the beneficial owners will not be known until the government is changed and we unravel it. Thank you.
We have one other question from Divina, and I know we're going to be wrapping up soon. So, Divina, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. This is for perhaps Dr. Adams and Mr. Ramjatan. The fifth project, Waru permit that was granted to Exxon requires a parent guarantee. At its press conference last month, Exxon's country manager said that the US $2 billion that was ordered by the court covers this. With your legal knowledge, Mr. Ramjatan, can you say if this $2 billion ordered by the court as an interim guarantee can satisfy the requirements of another permit, which is the Waru?
In my legal opinion, it does not. But I haven't really gone into details about that. I'll ask Vince to help me out here.
Ian, okay? We meaning the coalition when I was at the EPA, we put into that permit unlimited parent company guarantee, meaning, and we didn't care what the insurance was. It was Exxon who went out and whatever the insurance they had. It says very clearly, and then Judge Kissoon's ruling, he said it with the language, and I can't remember his description of the language, how simple and clear it was. We put a clause in there that said insurance, whatever insurance you had, whether it's a dollar or $1 billion or $100 billion, the parent company has to sign up to cover any and all costs above that. So it was clear. When the when the PPPC government came into office, they went and revised that permit. You remember when Lisa One came up for renewal, they added a clause, and the stupidity of them, right? I don't know if it was a deliberate to confuse the SU. They added a clause to say that they will determine what that parent company guarantee is. So think about this. Here is a clause that was there before that says the parent company guarantee is unlimited. Exxon signs off to that. When the coalition leaves office, they added another clause to say that they will determine what that parent company guarantee is. So when the lawsuit was filed, that was their defense, and it was thrown out. It was thrown out by Judge Kissoon, said this is absolute nonsense. No, you guys came in with this clause that that you're going to make the determination. It already says here that the parent company guarantee has to be unlimited. So the answer to your question is that, and that was how this $2 billion came up. So they negotiated between the EPA and the PPPC. They negotiated that $2 billion. That's what they're calling that parent company guarantee. That Judge Kissoon says has no validity whatsoever. So that's what's in the legal realm here. And so this $2 billion that the other judge asked them to show, to me, it's just a bond money. To be honest, it's a bond. To very put it simply, it's a holding place. So, well, okay. In the meantime, while we're waiting on this appeal for the unlimited, remember what it is. The appeal is about the unlimited parent company, but the other judge says, well, okay, since you guys went and negotiated this $2 billion, show us that $2 billion, and it's basically, to put it in simple terms, it's bond money. So it's a holding place just in case something happens while the appeal is being heard. That money is there. So don't let us get distracted, because that's what they want. They want for us to focus on this $2 billion. It has nothing to do with the case. They're two separate issues. So, and Davina, just to go back quickly to, to your other question, because it's very important with this ring fencing. Here's the other thing about ring fencing. Especially when you hear the despicable comments by the vice president. The best investment that we or any country can make is in education. Exxon knows it, because I have been, and I'm not making this up. This is what the big business schools in the United States and all over the place teach. I have been in training with a lot of these Exxon officials when I worked for the U.S. government, when we used to have these programs at MIT and at Harvard business schools. And what we learned is that education, so they know education is what builds a country, and Exxon and them would tell you, without exception, that what takes them and attracts them to foreign countries to invest, it's education. So when I hear this government now, these teachers, I cannot believe how a teacher is making $90,000 per month. $91,000 per month and averaging $180,000 per month. That's less than poverty wage. So when I hear the vice president is saying, well, we can't afford to pay teachers this kind of money, but however, we're taking that money and deferring it sometime down in the future that we do not even know what we're going to be getting for that investment, or we might even be losing money for all you know if the oil prices drop. So it's the best investment we can make right now. rather than giving Exxon to invest that money in whatever the heck they're doing with it, we can invest it right now in our teachers. It wouldn't take a whole lot of it. So ring fencing would do all of that, and you can run the numbers. It's a very tiny fraction of what we're giving up in this contract. Without ring fencing, we could have been paid. I know we would have paid for at least one, Lisa one. I'm not sure. We probably have been close to paying for Lisa two. Do you know what that money can give us in terms of like the teachers' wages, in terms of raising? We have almost half of our people in Guyana living on $5.50 US per day. 550 US per day. That money could have been investing in those folks to build capacity, because when all is gone, we've got to have a sustainable economy that we've got to be building right now. Exxon is taking our money, and Exxon and Hess, they're bragging every single day as to how much, how their companies, have been advancing and going forward. Not Guyana.
Thank you very much, Vince. Ladies and gentlemen, members of the media, we've gone over our hour, and I don't see any other hands up. So I think this is a good time to say thank you very, very much for participating in this week's Alliance AFC press conference. And I thank everybody and wish you a safe weekend. Thank you very much, and we join you next week.